Hello, you're very welcome along to our special Slovakia versus Ireland preview here on Tackling Sport. It's Daniel here, joined alongside me by my brother Sean,
How's it going?
and on the line by Oisin McQueirns of Pundit Arena.
Lads, how's things?
Not too bad, Oisin. I guess this is a big game. The winner goes into a proper playoff, as I've been calling it, for Euro 2020. How do you think Ireland are lined up so far? And Stephen Kenny's reign, albeit a short one, how do you think he's gotten on?
Yeah, it's a huge game, as I said there. I think it's going to be super interesting. The Nations League games didn't quite go, I suppose, maybe as a lot of Ireland fans would have planned. I'd imagine as Stephen Kenny would have planned as well. But this will be the true test, I suppose. A proper now. I know the Nations League games are competitive, but this is a real one that has proper stakes, proper immediate stakes, I suppose. So in terms of how Ireland fixed, I think they're in a better place than they probably were last month. When you give the fact that Kenny has had time with the squad. I think crucially as well, the squad they'll have had more games just in the Premier League and their domestic league, so they should be a little bit fresher than they were last month. They should probably have adapted a little bit better to Kenny's ideas, to Kenny's style. So I think they're in better shape. I still think it's a tough ask. I mean, Slovakia away, I think any away game really in Europe. I know fans are not necessarily a factor anymore, but I don't think that really is going to play too much into the game here. It's Slovakia anyway, but any away game is tough, and the fact that we have to win 2 in a row is going to be tricky. But am I optimistic? Slightly, yes. But I still do think it's going to be a tough game for Kenny and the lads.
Sean, what on that point though she made there in terms of are Ireland in a better place than they were a month ago?
Yeah, they probably are. Like Oisin said, we've seen a lot better club performances than maybe we've seen over the last 12 months or 18 months. You know, more players are starting week in, week out, more players are scoring. Albeit this weekend, there wasn't, a couple of players dropped like Conor Hourihane and Matt Doherty, but if you think about it, maybe a couple of days rest because it's been quite relentless, hasn't it, with cup and club football. So, I think we are in a good position. John Egan got game time again after being suspended. So, I think what this side has done well is when their backs have been to the wall over the last 2 or 3 years, as under Martin O'Neill and Mick McCarthy, they've produced results. And I think, Stephen Kenny's going to tap into that. And I think the lads, that for whatever way, what Stephen Kenny will want from them long term, I think the players will know how to best get a result. So, 20 or 30 minutes into a game where maybe it's not going as well as Stephen Kenny will like, I think the lads will he'll know what he'll get from them in terms of, defensive stability or in terms of just general aggression on the pitch. And I think, our Irish fans will see that on Thursday night.
Well, going back to those first 2 games, it actually seems like a long time ago. I was only kind of looking at the teams and the results and the performances there last night. What did you make of those first 2 games overall? Because Stephen Kenny definitely was trying to try a few things, 2 completely different midfield threes, for example, yet the forward line stayed the same for both games, starting wise. What did you make of those first 2 games, Oisin? What was your initial reaction, and maybe on reflection, any other positives to pick up from it?
Yeah, I think it was an experimental, I suppose, first couple of games really, and there was a lot of bedding in that was, I suppose, tried by Kenny, and that was needed. The first game against Bulgaria. Yeah, I mean, it started off, so I think both games kind of fell into a similar pattern whereby I think they started off and kind of Ireland were kind of grown into a little bit of a pattern, and then it kind of started to not fall away, but it kind of got a little bit trickier as the game went on. And then the goal came for their respective opponents, and that kind of flattened things a little bit, I suppose. I would have been interested to see how the games would have gone, especially the one in Aviva with a crowd, with a full house for Kenny's first game. I think that maybe that could have been a factor in that game, but I think there was plenty of positives, I suppose, and it's kind of hard to look at games like that in a sphere whereby you kind of you have to nearly take away the result and kind of just look at all the mitigating factors that are kind of around for those 2 games. Kenny's first game, it's going to take time for ideas to bed in. You looked at even the likes of Shane Duffy, somebody who's so experienced in that first game against Bulgaria. It was clear that he kind of was struggling with what Kenny wanted him to. Yeah, so I think it'll be a good test of Kenny's to see where Kenny is taking his side and how the lads have kind of bought into it a little bit. But no, I do think there was positives to take from the last two games, but I think it is probably still important to note that the results weren't fantastic. And I think one of the things that kind of was probably worrying for Ireland fans was the fact that the defensive solidity, I suppose, that we've kind of been built on over the past 2 years under McCarthy and under O'Neill, or past few years, should I say, under McCarthy and under O'Neill was just didn't necessarily seem to be there. And I think Ireland could always kind of build on. Now, I know it's going forward, it wasn't always pretty, or it wasn't always effective, but we could always kind of have that defensive stability to fall back on. And over the last two games, it kind of didn't necessarily seem like we had that there, which might be a little bit of worry for Ireland fans and Kenny, but it's one of those things that I feel like the players are good enough that Kenny, especially at the back, that Kenny will be able to kind of to build that back up and get us back on track in terms of defensively, and then from there we can kind of build a base on where to go attack wise.
You mentioned one thing there, the crowds. Sean, I want to bring you on this. Normally we'd be able to see the reaction of the Aviva fans, and the reception of Stephen Kenny, I guess, would have been overly positive. But I suppose this is a different scenario where if Stephen Kenny had a Nations League, then a World Cup qualifying campaign, you could slowly build towards that, where there's a Euro 2020 qualifier in the middle. Do you think the Irish public will be patient enough if we don't put a performance in against Slovakia, but then there's positive signs in the Nations League? Or do you think already there's a couple of, we've seen from the last couple of games, there were a couple of detractors ready to almost kind of jump, and there's already seemed to be two camps kind of building already, pro Kenny and otherwise?
I'd say it was probably a blessing in disguise there was no one at the Aviva for that Finland game, because I just think there could have been a reactive reaction from people, very like on the pulse after the whistle, as we could so often see across, Irish football and English football. So it would have been, Stephen Kenny's probably lucky in that sense, and he's got a little bit more time. I think, because it's a playoff, because it's a game that has something, on the line. I think, we just need to see some sort of performance, and not that Stephen Kenny's gonna bring us side to go and lump it long and just get men behind the ball. I think we're just going to see maybe a little bit more of a solid performance in that sense. At times we're going to probably sit in and look at the way his Dundalk sides played Zenit, and you think of Darragh Horgan's goal where he's running away past the Zenit team. I think we could just hit them on the break at times, and we have a little bit of pace up there now. Calum Robinson, Aaron Connolly, they're probably two lads who are likely to start. Calum Robinson's been playing well. And I just think we might do that a little bit more than we did, say away in Bulgaria. And I think that I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because, if we can just stay in the game for as long as possible and hit them on the break. And I think that could be our best way of winning, because if we leave ourselves open again at the back, like we did at times against Bulgaria and Finland, Slovakia could score. And if they score one, that could be enough.
Just on that, Sean. Yeah, I think I'll be interested to see. I think you probably go with more experience in the starting 11 than he did for the last two games. I think the likes of Ida. I think now, in fairness to Adam Ida, I think he actually did really well in the two games. I know he didn't find the net, but I think he played well. But I think he'll go with him a Goldrick. I think in the midfield he'll go with what he knows, and I don't necessarily think. I think again, Malumbi was one of those who played quite well. I tell you, good showing against Finland, but I think he'll go with more experience. He'll go with a Hendrick, a Hoare, and maybe Van Arter or someone like that beside James McCarthy. Maybe even both of them beside James McCarthy instead of Malumbi. I think he would have played probably Coleman as well, given Coleman's form, given Coleman's experience. Obviously, he's out now. But I just think in general, I think there'll be, I don't want to call them risks, but I just think he'll add more experience to the starting 11 than perhaps he had over the last two games.
Yeah, I think he'll know what he's going to get, from a David McGoldrick. And McGoldrick scored there against Arsenal last weekend. So I definitely think he'll be in his plans. And I agree with you. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing to go with a little bit more experience to just, keep us in the game and get a result. And that's what it's all about. Now, we're not asking Stephen Kenny to put 11 men behind the ball because it's not him. But at times in the game, we're going to have to be resilient, and we're going to have to, try and hit them on the break. And I still think we'll be able to, and with Connolly and with Robinson up front, it gives us that little bit of an added dimension.
Just on Alameda, so he's kind of come on for Norwich over the last 4 games, but he hasn't actually been playing in that number 9 because Pookie's been playing 90 minutes there.
Yeah.
So, there's that as well. So I take it, first of all, we're kind of happy enough that the back 4 and the goalkeeper are going to be pretty much, Coleman, Duffy, Egan, Stevens, and then Randolph in goal. So if we move on to number 9, And Stephen Kenny's going to play it.
Coleman's injured.
Sorry, Matt Doherty. Sorry.
Doherty,
I was already getting ahead of myself there.
I know. Yeah.
I expected to be talking about that now, Doherty Coleman thing for the first 20 minutes. But look, it's almost like a blessing in disguise really for Stephen Kenny. He doesn't have to answer that because overall they're two really good right backs. Like, so it's not like the most important thing, you know.
It settled itself, that one, I suppose. Yeah.
Exactly. So if we move on to maybe that he's going to play a 4-2-3-1, that number 9 is it going to be David McGoldrick then up front on his own?
I'd imagine it will be, yeah. I think, as you said, Ida, as well, that kind of, not a lack of game time, I suppose, but not full 90 minutes every week is probably going to affect him. I think, as I said, yeah, I think he did well against Finland and Bulgaria. But I just think McGoldrick, because to be fair to McGoldrick, like, he's never let us down when he's played. I don't think he's always been excellent. And then, okay, he just isn't necessarily a goal scorer. But I think what he brings to the side, especially in an away game like that, I think will be key. The ball will stick to him. He'll be able to link players really well. I think it's really important, though, that Kenny gets someone that gets a 10 that actually will support McGoldrick. Because I think that, again, when Ida played up there, I thought he was slightly isolated a little bit from the midfielders. Now, I don't know if that's on Ida or that's on the midfielders, just not pushing forward. But I think he does. It's key that he has someone just off McGoldrick there. But yeah, I think McGoldrick is pretty much set for that number 9. He scored as well at the weekend, so that's always a good plus. He'll be full of confidence.
Absolutely. So if we move on to the 2 wings then before coming back to that number 10, who are we kind of thinking is there at the moment? Because, you know, Connolly started on the left, O'Dowda started on the right both games. Do you think it's a case that Calum Robinson's good form? He's played on the right before, plenty of times for Ireland. Do you think he slots in at right with Connolly retaining his place in the left, fitness aside, if he gets fit?
Yeah, I think Connolly is pretty much nailed on, to be honest. I think he's started the Premier League season brilliantly, got a nice goal. And I think I've seen him play a good few times now this season. I've seen Brighton for some reason they're always on, but Connolly's looked excellent. Like his link-up play is brilliant. He's been a nuisance. So even against United, the amount of times that he could have had a penalty was unbelievable. Like he just kind of was buzzing around that back four, and he caused real problems. And he scored a really nice goal. I can't remember who it was against earlier in the season, but yeah, he's been in great form, so I think he has to play. And to be fair to him, in the 2 games against Finland and Bulgaria, I thought he was probably our best attacking outlet, and he has that pace that really, really hurt defenders. No matter what, no matter how the game is going, you can kind of use him as a bit of an outlet, I think. Out on the right, yeah, Robinson. You see, that's a position I think that's still up for grabs, because I mean, he showed good faith in O'Dowda, and I thought O'Dowda actually did quite well, but he's not playing again for Bristol City, and I don't know.
He's had an injury, hasn't he? And he's only just come back.
Yeah,
he came off against Finland, didn't he?
Yeah, he's been kind of like like that kind of. I don't know if that's going to hurt him though, really, in Kenny's eyes. You know what I mean? I think Kenny's the kind of manager that if he trusts you and has faith in you and you perform well for his side, he'll kind of keep you in there. You know what I mean? But yeah, Calum Robinson's been really good, but. There's also an intro I was kind of thinking as well. I think McGoldrick will get that number 9 spot, but I think Calum Robinson potentially could be able to shout for that number 9 as well, considering he scored 2 goals against Chelsea. He's performed well there for West Brom, more in a more central role. But yeah, out the right, I think that is one that is very intriguing for me. I think he might go with Robinson, but I think O'Dowda, given the fact that Kenny showed good faith in him, and I think he, in ways, he did repay the faith. I think he's definitely able to shout. I'll be interested because there's the McLean thing as well, whereby he's that kind of player who kind of could actually make a difference in a game like this, just given his experience at such a high level for Ireland, and the fact that he will run all day for you. He'll put in huge tackles for you. He'll put in a great shift for you, but you can't play McLean instead of Connolly, because that's Connolly's position now, I think. So I think Kenny has a lot of decisions to make there, especially in those wide areas.
Sean, you mentioned it was a big game and maybe the need for experienced players. Oisin touched on McLean. It was something I was thinking, that just Stephen Kenny out of that front 3, give you one defensive, midfielder, if that makes sense, and McLean maybe on the left, and then push Connolly out on the right. How do you think that's going to go? Or do you think he'll go with maybe the Connolly McGoldrick and then it's between Robinson or O'Dowda on the right?
Well, McLean didn't start for Stoke the weekend. And then if you think maybe someone like a Robbie Brady could fit in there again. Brady hasn't played an awful amount for Burnley. I think if he does go with anyone, I think he might go with Robbie Brady, just for the quality he has, not only dead balls, but crosses into the box. I think, like you said there about Calum Robinson at 9, I wouldn't be surprised to see Stephen Kenny, if we're chasing the game, if we need a goal or two, finish with Robinson at 9 and maybe drop McGoldrick into a position around the number 10 role and get pace on the wings. I think if he doesn't start with Robinson, I think he might start with O'Dowda, because I think like you said there, he is quite loyal. Stephen Kenny, he was like that for Dundalk, like that for the 21s, where if he likes you, he likes you. You think of someone like Zach El-Zavuzi, he started him constantly for the 21s, even though there was lads that were playing a higher level. He was, if he did a job for you, you're still in the team. And I think he will trust O'Dowd in that sense. It's just going to be interesting to see how we do. I think if we are to score or are to hit them, I think it could be hitting them on the break, and that's why you need the pace of Conley and Robinson and O'Dowd, because if we can get the ball into a goal and just play off him, if he can get it in behind the defence for Conley, I think that's our best avenue of scoring. And Conley looks really dangerous running at the ball with pace towards the goal, and I think we have to utilise that as best as possible.
One thing maybe to note, Oisin, is trying to get the best out of Matt Doherty on that right flank, that maybe if him and Calum O'Dowd, if they didn't quite work there, if someone more defensive works there to let Matt Doherty go forward, could you play James McLean on the right? There's a lot of options there for Stephen Kenny, and he's probably thinking of it, like Sean says, in terms of how do we best utilise our players going forward, particularly on the counter-attack, which could be so important.
Definitely. I think unlocking Doherty is probably a key. I mean, I know he's kind of struggled in a 4, it's been a little bit the same at Tottenham, and Sean, you mentioned that he didn't play at the weekend, but yeah, that could be an option for him, definitely. I think a lot of people spoke about kind of that 3 at the back. Yeah, so there's a lot of options for Kenny there. It is a good point you mentioned there, where kind of playing a more defensive player on that side, and then give Doherty the freedom of that kind of wing, because that's where he tried, I suppose it was, when he had all that whole right flank to himself. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how he does. I think Doherty's kind of player now that actually he does really need to perform at international level, because in fairness to him, under Mick McCarthy and Martin O'Neill, he was extreme. Like, he was a very bit power player, and he'd play sporadically, come on, this and that. He played left back a couple of times, but I think he's shown consistency in the Premier League. He's been so consistently good in the Premier League that he kind of now has to translate that over to international level, I think, for sure.
Yeah, and like you said there, maybe playing a more defensive play. You might even see maybe not Hendrick, because he's so pivotal to that midfield, but Hendrick's played there for Newcastle at times this year on the right, or if you do play Robbie Brady and Brady comes in field, and then it opens up space for Doherty. So I do think...
You think maybe Robbie Brady right mid as a right wing forward is a possibility?
Yeah, but again, he hasn't played a whole amount of club football.
Injury doubt, isn't
he? Yeah. He's got quality, and he has done it for Ireland, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him or someone of that ilk play to enable Doherty.
He went with O'Dowd the last day, left-footed. I guess Robbie Brady could possibly play there, but he was named as a midfielder. I say Stephen Kenny's probably strict enough in terms of, for example, like he sees forward players are named in the forwards kind of thing. And let's move on to that midfield 3, because Sean, but just before we bring Oisin, remember the team was announced initially the first time. What was your reaction to it? I remember you were saying straight away when it was picked. So it was Hendrick, McCarthy, and Hurren. What was your reaction straight away to that? And do you think they can play well again? Because your initial reaction straight away was that 3 in midfield doesn't work.
Yeah, I didn't think it worked. I thought it was a bit flat, a bit static. Look, I do like McCarthy, and I think he's really good. And a number 6, and then you could probably say you need more of a passing influence there. And then he went with Hendrick and Hourihane, and Hendrick gives you real energy in there. He's an unbelievable engine. He'll get around the pitch. He'll win balls back. But kind of Hourihane just was playing a little bit forward, so we couldn't really get the ball to him at times. And he hasn't really got the legs to play at number 10 and to play the role that Kenny would have wanted him to play. So I just thought the midfield was a little bit slow, a little bit flat. It wasn't a typical Stephen Kenny midfield. That's what I was saying, and I was just disappointed with even how it worked in the game. I thought it was really poor, and if we are to sort of play this style of football, Kenny's got to get a midfield, and he'll know that more than anyone, and he'll know what it looks like, and that's why I was surprised to see someone like an Alan Brown now play on, albeit championship. He's playing at the championship. I still think he could really do a job in there. I thought instead of Hourihane, he might play an Arder or a Malumbi in the number 8 role, which is so important to Stephen Kenny's sides. You look at the 21s, how important Jason Malumbi was to those wins and those performances. He was all around the pitch. He was everywhere. You think of Dundalk's side, Robbie Benson sort of in that role for Dundalk, and he was just everywhere for them. And I thought that's something I was more disappointed with more than anything. We just didn't have that legs or times in midfield, or that little bit of quality across the three. And I think, he'd 6 different players started in midfield, and you could tell he wasn't happy with the first game. So it'd be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there, Sean. It didn't really click that 3. But I think the thing is, I think Kenny knew it as well because he changed all 3 for the Finland game. But I do think you're right. It has to be 2 and 1, I think, for sure, because that's where I think Ida struggled, definitely. The fact that he just didn't have anyone kind of off him. I think, but I know we kind of you mentioned Brady there, out right or left. But I think I think Kenny could see Brady in that position whereby you go 2 behind, say McCarthy and, I don't know, a Hendrick, and then have Brady as your kind of 10, if you will, nearly. But yeah, I definitely think that's key. I think he knows it himself. I think he's kind of identified it. And I think bringing Jack Byrne in as well is a good addition, because he's different. He's the most natural 10 in the squad. Now, I don't think he's going to start. I think everyone kind of is fully aware of that. But I think even the Finland game was one of those games whereby just needed something different. It just needed a little bit of a spark, and it could have done with someone like Jack Byrne coming in and just playing in between the lines, because every change that kind of Kenny made, it just wasn't quite working. There was just something that wasn't quite clicking. And I think if we're playing Slovakia and it's 0-0, 20 minutes to go, if we're 1-0 down, 20 minutes to go, you could bring on a player like Jack Byrne and he can link it nicely and just change it and just be something different for the Slovakian defence to think about.
Yeah, and just going back to the 21s, because of Stephen Kenny's style and his 6, who's his sitting midfielder, his number 8, box-to-box 10, sort of playing a more attacking role. If you watched that Ireland game, you wouldn't have known who was who, because Conor Hurahan played very deep and at times took up a position, almost that left back to enable Enda Stevens to go forward. So then you could say Hendricks was playing the 10 and he just didn't really quite do it. So I'll be very interested to see. I thought Conor Hurahan played very well against Fulham a couple of weeks ago.
It was disappointing he got dropped for Barkley, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's looking there like he won't start anymore. So whether Kenny, goes with him again, I think that there's big decisions to make. I'm surprised, if Arthur's injured or he's getting a scan on his injury, I would have really liked to see him start, because he's got that little bit of bite in midfield. Remember his performance against Wales, and maybe that injury just puts him out of the frame. And it's big decisions for Kenny in midfield, because he's his sides have been renowned on this midfield and built around the 2 and 1 or the 3 specialized positions, and he just didn't get that right in the first couple of games. And be interesting to see what he does for Slovakia and also Wales and the other game in the group.
I'll be interested to see. Sorry to just go across there, but I'll be interested to see how James McCarthy does, because he started the season so well, and when you see him with Crystal Palace, he's brilliant. And then I just thought he was I didn't think he was. To put it one way, I thought he'd play much better than he did in the 2 games for Ireland. I thought like his addition would be a real. You'd really see it. I thought it'd be like you'd visually know that this midfield is so much better now because James McCarthy's there. But I just didn't think it kind of worked like that. I'm not sure what it was. I'm not sure if McCarthy was he was on a different wave. I think you kind of saw it a couple of times when the midfielders or the defenders, should I say, Shane Duffy would come out with the ball and McCarthy would kind of be looking for it, and Duffy might give it sideways or give it somewhere else. And I'm not sure if McCarthy was kind of on a different wavelength to where his defenders were, because it just wasn't clicking or what it was. But I then watched Palace against United, and McCarthy was so good playing there with James McArthur, and I was kind of like, wow, if he could translate this to Ireland, it'd be such a transformation for our midfield. Like.
Yeah, and McCarthy plays there in a 2 for Crystal Palace, so maybe that's it. Maybe
that could be the key, yeah.
Maybe he just doesn't have the legs anymore. He is old. He's experienced though. In that sense, he's been around a long time, and you're just hoping he puts in a big performance, because he's been a great player for Ireland down the years, and he's coming to that stage where this could be his last opportunity to play at another major tournament.
Would you start him, Oisin?
Oh, definitely, yeah, I would, yeah.
So I think he's in there. He's in there.
I think he's in there 100%, yeah, because I think there's no other player that we have in the squad at the moment who can do that job that McCarthy can. And when McCarthy's on at the level that he can do it, so yeah, he's in there straight away for me.
Okay, so we've one done, right?
Yeah.
We reckon he'll go for that. So we've got the 8 and the 10 to fill in. Where would you go now? I know you've mentioned a few players, but if it was, what do you think he'll happen, and maybe who would you play yourself? If it was up to you.
Yeah, well, I think he'll go Hendrick probably as the 8, and then I actually, the more I think about it, the more I'm convincing myself that he'll go with Brady as the 10. I think, I think he talked up Brady, because didn't Brady come off the bench in the Bulgaria game and then started the Finland game? I think
spot on.
Yeah, and I think he talked up Brady a little bit after the Bulgaria game, because it was his corner. I think then
his assist,
yeah. So I think he talked up Brady a little bit after the game, I remember, and then obviously played him in the Finland game. So I think that has kind of led me to believe that I think he's a fan of guy. He knows that Brady has that little creative spark that sometimes is needed. So I think, and I don't necessarily think, as we said, Sean, we did mention that loyalty that Kenny has. So I don't necessarily think that the lack of game time will kind of be a demerit to him now, unless he's not fully fit. That'll be the only kind of knock maybe. But yeah, so I think we go Brady at the 10 and Hendrick at the 8. I think in an ideal world, I think your two going forward anyway is going to probably be McCarthy and Malumbi, because Malumbi's the 8 that kind of, I think, is needed now. Is it a little bit too soon for him to play a big game like that? Potentially it is. I mean, he did okay against Finland, but I don't think he didn't stand out, you know what I mean? So I think he probably won't be playing there. And then as your 10, I mean, you'd like to see a Jack Byrne, you'd like to see a Troy Parrott, someone like that in there, an exciting kind of addition. But obviously that's another one that's a little bit far fetched for now. But yeah, so in terms of who I think it's going to be, I think he'll probably go Hendrick, and he'll probably go Brady. That kind of leaves Horan out of the loop a little bit, but I just think Hendrick is better suited for the 8 than Horan. I think Brady's better suited to the 10. So it's just the fact that Horan doesn't have a position in that 3 or that 2 and 1 whereby he slots in better than any of the other options, I think.
Sean, bring you in on that. I guess one thing you touched on, Malumbi being the perfect 8. Could you argue, Sean, that maybe in the future that Malumbi's probably the perfect 8 and Jack Byrne could potentially be the perfect 10? And do you think either of them, possibly not Jack Byrne, but do you think either of them have a small chance of starting under Kenny in a big game like this? Or do you think maybe down the line in the Nation League, which games we have to kind of talk about as well, I suppose?
Yeah, I think the Nations League, I think we'll see them both start, because it's not really realistic for the lads to go from a hectic club scene into 3 internationals or whatever it is in a week. So I think we will see them both start a game, and that's a real opportunity for them. They have to grasp it, because that's the only way they're going to get into this side. Just going back to that midfield, my only concern then would be McCarthy, Hendrick and Brady. If Brady does play in a 10, have we got the capability to get the ball into Robbie Brady, into his feet, in that final third, in between the defence and the midfield, and do McCarthy and Hendrick have that skill set to do so? And if we are to be successful, it's the playing out from the back and the quality on the ball and the composure that's going to get us there and create overloads. And I just think that would be my only concern. Even for all that I was disappointed with Hourahan in the Bulgaria game, really disappointed. I think he's got that ability to find a couple of passes and a 30-yard switch of play that maybe McCarthy and Hendrick don't have. And that would be my only concern for that midfield, is have we the ability to get the ball and create overload because of our passing, because of our committing players. And I just don't think, if we are to play like that, that's the problem. But I do think McCarthy and Hendrick will be the 2 at the base.
Yeah, and then I suppose that you could argue that there might be a worry that if Hendrick does kind of, because Hendrick is, I suppose, more odding and off midfielder now. Occasionally he doesn't influence the game. That's the one gripe I have with Jeff Hendrick, is that you can watch a full game where Jeff Hendrick is there and you wouldn't know that Jeff Hendrick's even playing. But could Jeff Hendrick go, because he goes all around the field, could he leave McCarthy a little bit exposed then? Because I thought that I felt like because there was a lot of gaps in the Finland and the Bulgaria games. Now obviously McCarthy played the one, but there was a lot of gaps at times. So if Hendrick is kind of going forward and if he's trying to support Brady, which I think he will do, and I think he does have to do, is there going to be gaps there? McCarthy, are people like the fullbacks going to have to fill them gaps in midfield, which obviously leaves gaps in a fullback. So that could be a worry as well, maybe for Kenny. The fact that Hendrick and McCarthy, is it a solid 2? I don't really know. There probably will be gaps there, I think, if Hendrick is there.
The only thing that could save Hourahan is the performance against Fulham. He was sort of playing more advanced than I'd ever seen him, because it was McGinn and Douglas Luiz at Villa in the sort of base of the midfield, and Hourahan was given a little bit more license to get into the box, and maybe Kenny would have seen that and was impressed with him. Also rested, I whatever about being dropped for the game, it'll be personal disappointment, but I think it's good for the lads, to get a rest. Matt Doherty played in Europe in the week, so I think it's just a rest will suit those players. And whether it's a big decision for Kenny, he has to get it right. You could argue he didn't get the other 2 midfields right. He was experimenting, he was trying, and I think if we are to play and have a really good performance on the ball, then I think he has to get that midfield right. And you talk about going forward. He's got loads of options as well, and it's just going to be interesting to see. I think everyone knows that the back five with the goalkeeper is set in stone, and then there's a couple of positions up for grabs in that midfield and going forward.
Yeah, just on that three then, Sean. So who would you go with then? What's your team? So because is Robbie Brady out of the frame for right wing then, based on maybe being picked as midfield here? Or?
No, I'd have McCarthy, Hendrick, Hourahan, and I play McGoldrick, Aaron Conley off the left, cutting in on his right, and then I'd probably go with a Robbie Brady playing, cutting in onto his left foot.
The more I'm looking at this, and McLean being named as a forward, I wouldn't be surprised if he starts James McLean, like you mentioned at the top of the show.
Yeah, it's
go back to that.
Yeah, it's one of those that's kind of been, I've been thinking about it more and more the more the kind of days go on. I mean, and I'm kind of slightly convincing myself that it actually wouldn't be a bad shout to do it either. The only problem is I don't think you should sacrifice Connolly out on that left hand side. Now I know, like, cutting in and all that stuff, I think that's where he's more effective. I think he'd kind of be wasted a little bit out the right, and then can you play McLean out the right? I don't know, but yeah, on that as well, Daniel. Yeah, the more I kind of think about it, the more I think he could put him in there. I mean, he does have experience. There's no doubt he'll put it in the shift for you for sure. And maybe, I mean, him and Stevens haven't done too well really necessarily in the past, but unless you kind of say to McLean, okay, you're doing a job here more so than you're kind of freeing up Enda Stevens to take that left hand side. But yeah, the more I kind of think about it, the more slightly I'm convinced myself as well that he might get a shot there.
Well, Kenny wouldn't put McLean in the midfield and just the squad list, because that's not how Kenny plays. He plays three in midfield, and I can't imagine James McLean slotting into one of them. I think Kenny knows McLean is a huge part of this Irish team.
Could he play right wing and maybe get the best out of Matt Doherty?
Potentially, because that's why I'd play Brady there, because he'd come in field and create that space for Doherty to get down the side of the fullback. I think he's going to use McLean in the sense of, if he does start him, he knows what he's going to get out of McLean, and he takes one of those variables out of the game of someone maybe not performing. You think of an O'Dowda who has done well in the past. He's played against Denmark away at times and played, big games for Ireland, whereas McLean is, he's been there, done it. He's done it in playoff matches. He's done it when Ireland have needed it. And, and if Kenny does play him, it's because he'll know they'll put in a performance. And, even if he does come off the bench, I think he'll use McLean as an impact, even to just get balls into the box. If he brings on Ida and McLean after 70 minutes, won't be surprised to see us maybe finish the game like that and put balls into the box and get Robinson as well in there. And, I think Robinson's couple of goals against Chelsea have to put him really in the frame. And I think that would be a very good front three if you had Connolly, Robinson and McGoldrick, but maybe he just wants, someone to come off the bench, a la Adam Ida or a Calum Robinson.
Yeah, just to finish, I suppose, on the McLean thing, I think those two performances did kind of need a little bit of a spark, it felt like. And I know McLean has had kind of detractors, obviously myself included, but I think he does what he does bring is that kind of like first minute of the game, huge tackle in on the fullback. Okay, he'll probably get himself a yellow card, but he'll rile lads up, you know what I mean? He'll get lads up. And he has, as you did say, Sean, crucially, he has experience in games like this. So it's kind of the whole environment is kind of one that McLean does thrive in. He tends to thrive in those environments. So, I don't think it'd be a massive risk if he did play him. I think, as I said, the more I think about it, the more I'm kind of convincing myself of it. I think we probably have better options in terms of going forward. But I just think perhaps if you look at all the mitigating circumstances surrounding the game, maybe it could be one for me.
I think Kenny might look at it and go, is he going to get 90 minutes out of James McLean in terms of his energy levels? He can, yes, but is he going to get 90 minutes of really good play? Probably not. So that's where I think, imagine if you're Jeff Hendrick or James McCarthy in that midfield after 60 minutes and it's been a tough game and you're kind of struggling for legs a bit, and you see James McLean come on and he just lifts you and he puts in a tackle, like you say, puts in a cross, wins a corner. And I think, let's not forget, for all the good football we want to play and how we think we're going to score, we've got Shane Duffy and John Egan, and crosses and corners are going to be huge. And if we can get a goal there.
So Robbie Brady probably starts somewhere then on that basis.
Yeah, well, you need a Hourahan or a Robbie Brady. One of them needs to play for their dead balls. But you can imagine McLean winning a free kick or a corner and we're scoring from it. And I think, you know, whether he has 70, 80 minutes in the belt in terms of, you know, really impactful play, I'm not sure, but that's why, you know, maybe coming off the bench, winning a corner could do something to Ireland.
And then just a quick word then finishing up on Slovakia. You know, they've got Hamsik back. He missed the last couple of games from quarantine rules. What did you make of them, Oisin? I know they'll be a lot stronger than they were in the Nations League, but it's still definitely a great opportunity for Ireland.
Yeah, it is a good opportunity. It's a tough game as well. I know they lost in the Nations League, and I think they lost to Czech Republic. I think they drew with Israel. So kind of pretty much the exact mirror results of what we had, really. So I suppose they're kind of looking at Ireland in the same kind of light. They finished third in their Nations League Group 2. So like it's a little bit of a 50. I mean, in terms of previous results, stuff like that, it's 50-50. But I think the away game, the fact that it's away from home, I don't know if that's necessarily a huge thing now with no fans, but I still think it's still an away game. You know what I mean? There is still that, and it's a tough ask for Ireland. Ireland don't win haven't won 2 away games in a row in a long time. So yeah, I think we're kind of looking at it. Ireland and Slovakia, we're looking at the same thing. They both think there's a real opportunity to get something. They'll definitely both be thinking that. Yeah, you mentioned Hamsik coming back. I think Dubravka's still out.
Yeah, he's missing.
Yeah. So he'll be
the Fulham keeper.
Oh yeah, Mark Rodak.
He started the first game.
Yeah. So to be fair, he's actually not too bad of a goalkeeper. I know he's Fulham aren't the best defensively, but I mean, you can't necessarily. He's been dropped and stuff like that. But yeah. So I still think it'll be a tough game. I think if it clicks, I think Ireland should do it if it clicks. But again, judging by the last 2 games, it is going to be a hard ask. There's no doubt about it. And then I suppose you get past Slovakia, and then it's another tough Bosnia. I think Bosnia and Herzegovina or Northern Ireland. They're both tough games, really tough games. I think so. Yeah, I'll be interested to see. I think, but yeah, I think both sides are looking at it in a similar fashion. I think they're both thinking we can get something here, but they both also know that it won't be easy if it won't be easy either way. For sure.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Slovakia are missing a couple of players there last day, Sean. There's a couple of MLS players. The Napoli lad, he's been on the bench for Napoli. There's still talk if they can get him from Napoli because of the Serie A kind of stuff. What do you make of Slovakia and then Ireland go forward? I think the midfield battle will be crucial because, as I said, Slovakia are missing about 3 or 4 starting from their lineup in the midfield.
Yeah, and like I said, for all we want to play this, you know, style of football, I think we just get a result and get in, and then maybe sort of try and input our style of play into the Wales game and into the other game. And you know, I think I think a lot rides on the defence. You know, if we are to play out from the back, we can't afford any mistake. It just demoralises the whole team. It demoralises everyone. You know, and we give a sloppy goal away from passing out from the back and just making basic errors. You know, I think it's going to come back to haunt us. So I think if we're solid in defence, if Duffy and Egan are solid, Matt Doherty and Stevens give us something to go forward to, because we haven't really mentioned them, but our 2 fullbacks are, you know, 2 of our most creative players. And if you think about having Connolly cut in off the left onto his right, creating that space for Stevens, and having a Brady or a McLean or a Dowda cutting in off the right, creating that space for Doherty, that could be where Ireland create, you know, huge chances. And you know, my sort of idea on the game is we could struggle early on and Ireland just go into a bit of not a shell, but go into a good solid defensive shape for 10 or 15 minutes, and then create from there and hit them on the break, and you know, use Connolly's pace or use McGoldrick's skill up there. And I think, you know, all Irish fans want to see from that is we want to see the idea of trying to play out from the back as much as possible. So we also want to see a good defensive shape at times, and lads like Duffy and Egan doing what they do best and throwing themselves at shots and throwing themselves at crosses coming in. And we just want to see a good performance, and I think we need a result, and I think that's probably our best way of fusion of good attack and play yet defensive solidity.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough balance, I suppose. I think the fact that you mentioned it there, Sean, the kind of playing out from the back, whereby still kind of trying to cut those defensive mistakes out, because a couple of times was a little bit some sloppy exchanges, I suppose, between the back 4. In the Finland and Bulgaria game, that we feel in that as well. Duffy, I think in particular, struggled, as we mentioned earlier. But yeah, it's just about kind of striking that balance, and I think but it's also about trust in the process, I suppose, as they say. You know what I mean? I think if one pass goes astray, and okay, maybe Slovakia get a chance, don't score. I think that for my issue with Duffy, especially in the first game, was that we saw it. I think he took the ball. It was in the first minute. He took the ball, had a heavy touch, overran it a little bit, tried to kind of take it out from the back. clattered into the attacker, the Bulgarian attacker, gave away a free kick, and then from there he kind of you kind of phrase, but he kind of went into a shell a little bit. Then I felt like he didn't kind of want to receive the ball. These players' confidence to play that way and to kind of tell them that they do make a mistake doing it. You kind of still have to stick at it. You can't change it. You can't lose faith in the system, because I think that's where a lot of teams, you see it in the Premier League now, so many, even like Arsenal, Leeds, Mikel Arteta, so like passing out from the back, but sticking to it is so key. It's like it's nearly half the battle. Like, you can pass the ball out from the back all you want, and then when you make a mistake, you just go, oh no, okay, no, we're not doing that anymore. And you see commentators love it, like your Graham Souness's, they love that the kind of phrase. So when you're knocking it about, and then, oh, why don't they just clear it? Well, just get it up the field, But that defeats the whole thing. That's if you just got up the field every time, there'd be no process, and it just wouldn't work. So that's, I think, a key as well, is to trust that, okay, it might not go perfectly every single time, but you have to keep going at it, and you have to keep sticking to it no matter how tough the game is.
Duffy's going to have a huge game, going to be captain if he will start. And I think he's got a huge game, not also in our own box, but in the opposition's box, and maybe scoring a corner from there. But he's going to have a big game, and it's a big, moment for him because of the Bulgaria game where he was a little bit sloppy. He needs a really solid performance. I know he scored there, but he needs a good defensive performance as well, because he's our captain.
Just on Duffy there. Do you think that, I kind of was hashing this idea out a little bit in my head, the fact that Duffy is now playing with Celtic, who kind of control the ball a lot, have a lot more possession, they're winning games, he's scoring goals, maybe his confidence will be a little bit up from, I know it's only been a month, but a lot can change in a month. Do you think like his confidence might be up, given how well he's doing at Celtic and how well they're performing?
Yeah,
bring that into
he's got 2 goals. He's also played 7 times since the last set of fixtures. So
I'm playing with a team who are essentially playing the halfway line. So like that's kind of I know it's not necessarily as free flowing maybe as Kenny would like it to be with Ireland, but it's a similar style. It's a lot more similar to what it was, say, at Brighton.
Yeah, and for all that Brighton did play out from the back, you're under pressure. You're being pressed by Marcus Rashford, Mo Salah week in, week out, and I think that's a good thing about Celtic. He's happy there. He's playing for his boyhood club. The passing of his father affected him for a while because it was such an important figure, but to play for his boyhood club and just, have all happy memories going into this game. And, he's one of our key goal threats as well. And I wouldn't be surprised to see an 85th minute winner or equaliser from Shane Duffy.
Yeah, score prediction, Oisin?
I think, I want to say 1-1 because it's just the default setting is 1-1 whenever Ireland play. But I think they could nick it 1-0. I think it'll be close either way. It'll be 1-0. 1-0, 2-1 either way, I think, if it's not a draw. But yeah, my heart says Ireland can nick it 1-0, but my head probably says again 1-1. And then, I mean, when you go into extra time, penalties and stuff like that, it just kind of gets a bit messy. But yeah, I think I think the players will have set. I think they'll know the style a little bit more. They'll be a little bit fresher, given the fact that they're playing week in, week out. They're not fresher, so they'll be more kind of on the ball, I suppose. They'll be sharper, would be a better word to use. But yeah, so I just think it could click. I just think, because it didn't, I was actually surprised how it didn't click in the first 2 games, because I think I said that I was pretty confident that they'd fairly dust Bulgaria, just given how bad Bulgaria were when we played them under McCarthy. But yeah, no, I'm confident now. I think it'll click. I think it'll be tough, but I think if it clicks, I think they could nick a 1-0, definitely.
Sean?
1-0 or 2-1. I think, but
has the behind closed doors goals not going to come into effect for Ireland's games now?
No, hopefully not defensively wise.
Yeah.
Hopefully Darren Randall's not too busy, but I think we're going to show that little bit of grit, that little bit of determination, and sort of the attacking flair, we hope, as well, similar to a Dundalk performance in Europe, against the Zenit. And I think that's going to be huge, and I think it's going to be another Stephen Kenny European masterclass.
I'd take 7-2, like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it could be goals like
goals. Imagine, I don't think
it just doesn't work with Ireland matches, does it?
It just wouldn't work, and I can't imagine Slovakia being the most free flowing side either. So I don't think it won't be City against Leeds anyway. That's for sure.
Listen, Oisin from Pundit Arena, thanks a million for joining us.
No worries, lads. Thanks a million.